Happy New Year. I wish you the very best in the coming months, and the very best as we finish up our current semester. I wanted to speak with you a moment today about All's Well That Ends Well. I'd like to give you a few tips, some general tips about reading Shakespeare, and some tips about how to look at character and look at the actions that a character takes and infer qualities that that character possesses. So let's first talk about some general thoughts about reading Shakespeare. One of the things that can happen is you can get lost as you start to read because you're not quite sure what's happening, the language is difficult, and then once you're a little lost, it's easy to kind of just wander into the forest and just have no sort of sense of signpost, nothing you can grab onto that helps you figure out where you're at. There's ways to try to avoid that. And one of them is to sort of break down the play as you read it into components, into sections. And one of the ways to do that is to look at entrances and exits of characters. Because oftentimes a scene will be broken down into segments depending on when certain characters enter the scene and when they exit. And that usually indicates a transition point, a point where the movement of the story is likely to shift somewhat. Now, if you'll read on beyond the section where we begin in class, what you'll see is that at a certain point, Bertram exits on page 6, and Helena is there on the stage, and because everyone else has exited, that means she's by herself. And there's a term for a speech that a character gives when they are by themselves and they are speaking, but they're not really speaking to anybody, and that term is a soliloquy. And so this is the first soliloquy of the play, I believe, and it is Helena speaking in this soliloquy. The power of a soliloquy in a play is that it allows us to get a kind of sense of the inner thoughts of the character. So the character is speaking out loud, but really it's almost as though we're listening to the character. We're listening to the character's actual consciousness. We're actually inside the character's head. When you're trying to figure out who Helena is as a character, the soliloquy could be a really good place to begin. You could really get a sense of, okay, what are her inner thoughts? What does this tell us about her as a person? Okay, then there's another transition. So we have that beginning section where we find out about a little of the background about Bertram and Helena. We have Helena's soliloquy. And now there's a character named Parolles who enters. Parolles, P-A-R-O-L-L-E-S, and that's at the bottom of page 6. Parolles is a military man, and he and Helena have a talk that you should probably look at pretty closely. Try to get a sense of what does Helena's responses to Parolles tell us about her as a person. But I'd also suggest that you look closely at how Helena responds in the last section of that speech when she and Parolles kind of get into it about who he is as a soldier. Let's look at that on page 8. Oh wait, I'm sorry. It's page 9. If you look at page 9, line 189, Helena says, "Monsieur Parolles, you were born under a charitable star." And Parolles says, "Under Mars, I." Now, one thing you need to know is that Mars was regarded as the god of war. So at that point, Parolles is trying to say, well, I am a great warrior. I am a very, very warlike person. And Helena says, "I especially think under Mars." Parolles, "Why under Mars?" Helena, "The wars hath so kept you under that you must needs be born under Mars." Parolles, "When he was predominant," meaning when Mars was particularly powerful. Helena says, when he was retrograde. Well, retrograde is a term in astrology meaning that the power of the influence of Mars, of the planet Mars, was lesser at that point. So what is she saying there? Well, she's making a little dig at Parole, saying, no, you're not as warlike as you think you are. You're not such a great soldier. Paroles, why think you so? Helena, you go much backward when you fight. Well, what is a soldier who goes backward when they fight? Well, it's a soldier who's retreating. So at this point, Helena is giving Paroles something of a hard time. And that's worth knowing if you're going to write about who Helena is as a person. That is worth your while to examine that. What does that tell us about her, that she would take those digs at Parole and kind of undercut him? Okay, so this is the sort of thing you want to do as you proceed forward with this assignment. You want to notice entrances and exits, sort of divide these sections up in your mind so that you're really kind of aware of what's happening at every moment, and see if you can really identify how the actions of Bertram and Helena speak to their character. Once again, Happy New Year to you. I hope you have a great day today and a great new year as we move forward.